All right, this video is for Module 27 on encoding. We're going to talk about how you go and get your information from short-term memory into long-term memory. So encoding is that noticing and attending to information. And you can do this by one of two ways. So the first way that you can do this is through automatic processing. Automatic processing is going to be that unconscious processing of that all those non-essential information. So this is going to be when you remember things that really, in the broad scheme of things, weren't important. You didn't put forth any effort into remembering them, you just do. Like, for example, if I asked you right now, what did you have for breakfast? Okay, you probably didn't have to sit down and, remember that and work on it and, recite it to yourself in the off chance that I would ask you what you had for breakfast, okay? It just automatically gets stored in your brain. Now, keep in mind that obviously in those cases, automatic processing, for most people, automatic processing does not last in your long-term memory for very long. Because it's not something that it's very important. You don't need to know it. So if I asked you what you had to breakfast last Tuesday, you're less likely to remember it. But automatic processing happens without any effort. Now, the opposite of all this is obviously effortful processing. And effortful processing is the processing that requires effort. It requires you to think about and to practice it. An example in class, we did a couple of them. We talked about the 12 gifts of Christmas. So remember the song, "On the first day of Christmas, my true love gave to me." And then you have to remember all things, okay? You had to practice these things. And what we found in class is that when I asked you to write down the gifts that you remember, you're more likely to remember the first 5, okay? Because those are the ones that you said over and over again. Okay, and the 5 golden rings obviously stands out just because it's slower. It's a kind of a different, they always emphasize that in the song, okay? But the 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, those are going to be, you don't say as often. There's not, a whole lot unique about them, so you don't necessarily remember them very well. But that's still effortful processing, so you have to think about it. Now, within effortful processing, how you remember things is based on a couple of things. First of all, you can do some rehearsal. So this is this conscious repetition, and you're saying to yourself, okay, effortful processing means where I'm going to go and work on remembering things. Okay, so you're constantly repeating it. Now, Hermann Ebbinghaus, he's a psychologist. He kind of did a little quirky little experiment. He decided to make up a bunch of random, just no-nonsense words. And what he did is that he practiced them to himself. And so he did 2 different groups. And so he had one group that, he practiced to himself maybe one night. So maybe he practiced it to himself Monday night. And then he tested himself to see how many he actually remembered on Tuesday. He did pretty good. And then he tested himself again on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and then like 2 weeks out, a month out, a year out. And what he found is that when he just practiced it one time, he remembered less and less the more time went by. Okay? But when he spaced out his practicing of these words over, say, a week or 2 weeks, he remembered those for a longer period of time, and he would actually remember them for even up to like a year or more later. So this is Hermann Ebbinghaus. He's the guy that you have to blame for people telling you not to cram before a test. He's the guy you have to blame for people telling you that you should study information every night. Okay, this is the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve, and he basically said that the retention of the words that you remember is going to be very, very good right after you remember it. And the more time passes, your retention goes down further and further and further. And so this is going to be based off from cramming. Okay, so this is why, also explains why if you go and cram before every single test or quiz or whatever, maybe you're somebody that does really good with cramming for the test or quiz and you remember it the next day. Awesome, great for you. Here's the question. How do you do on the final? Do you remember that information that you crammed a month ago into your head right before the test? Do you remember that at the end of the semester when you have to take a final and that same information pops up? If you go and study over time, you will be more likely to remember it at the end of the semester with very little effort compared to somebody that crammed. So in the end, it will pay off. Now, effortful processing also looks at the serial position effect, okay? This is the idea that you recall the first and last items best on a list. This was the idea of the primacy effect and the recency effect. In class, I asked you to remember, see how many presidents you can remember. And if you remember, we looked at we tallied how many, which presidents everybody remembered, and what you found was the ones at the very beginning you remember, the ones at the end you remember, the ones in the middle, not so much. Okay, so this is the serial position effect. So the things in the beginning, the things at the end are going to be the ones that you remember. This includes, for example, and I think I gave this example in class, where if you're talking about for a class for the semester time, you would remember the beginning of the semester information, maybe the end of the semester information, but the stuff in the middle is a little fuzzy. Now, the only exception to this, and this kind of goes back to that, the presidents, okay, there is the von Riestorff effect. The von Riestorff effect is where you have a kind of a unique case somewhere in the middle. And for example, Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln, everybody remembers Abraham Lincoln. Why do you remember Abraham Lincoln? Well, there's a bunch of different reasons. He was assassinated, he was president during the Civil War, he freed the slaves, whatever, okay? Those are the reasons why you remember Lincoln. Even though he's in the middle here, there's a spike, okay, of the ones that you right around him, okay? So that's a serial positioning effect. Now, what do we actually encode? Well, we encode a couple of different things. So we can process information visually, acoustically, and semantically. So visually is going to be where you're visually processing and you're looking at something and you will remember it based off from what it looks like. Okay? So for example, have you ever had this happen where you're taking a quiz or a test, you get to a question, you read the word, and you're like, oh crap, I don't remember this. Oh boy. Oh, I remember where it is in my notes. I remember it's on the left-hand side. It's like the second one down. I can see it in my notes. I just can't remember what it means. That's visual processing. Okay? Acoustic processing is going to be auditory. So this could be a case of you get to something on the quiz or the test and you're just like, oh, I remember Stout saying something about this. It was a Friday. She talked about an example that related to a test, but I don't remember what she said. That's acoustic. Okay? Semantic encoding is going to be where you are giving meaning and personal meaning to something. Okay? So this is going to be where, oh yeah, I totally remember this because I remember the example that I thought of when she was talking about this was when I was sitting on my math test and I had this happen. That's semantic encoding. Okay, so giving personal meaning to it. Now, as you might imagine, where I'm leading you towards is the fact that the ones that are more successful, the percentage of later remembering like a particular word, like a term, a new term, is the semantic encoding. Semantic processing by far makes you better remember a particular term. So that's why, for example, I'm constantly giving you examples of things, trying to give some sort of meaning to things that may not have meaning right now to you. Acoustic is going to have a better chance of you remembering it than visual. Visual has a very terrible chance. If you just see it, okay, it's totally not going to help you remember it. This is also the reason why, for example, when you miss a class and you're supposed to get the notes, I encourage you to watch this video rather than going and getting the notes just from your friend and visually looking at the information. Okay, that's not going to help you process it. If you visually look at it while I'm showing you this video and listen to me talk, it's going to increase your chances. If you give them information meaning yourself, that's going to by far outreach anything that I can do on this video. Okay, so you are more easily, it's more easy to remember vivid images than just auditory words. So if you think about pictures of terms, it's going to be a lot easier to remember those terms rather than if it's just a spoken word. Okay, and oftentimes there are words that are better and easier to remember than others. Okay, this is also why, for example, have you ever had teachers that, like when you have terminology, they want you to draw a picture of the term. They don't want you to like write out the words. They want you to draw a picture. So, for example, I have this lovely little picture that talks about elaboration, and you're supposed to give some explanations and examples and all this other stuff. But the more pictures that you have, the more it sticks in your brain rather than just going and talking about the term. Mnemonic devices can also help. Mnemonic devices can help you remember things. So one mnemonic device, for example, is the PEG system. I don't know if you remember this from reading in your book. The PEG system is this interesting system of trying to help you remember things. Personally, I think it sounds like it's more trouble than it's worth. But the way the PEG system works is that you associate a number with a particular thing that rhymes with it, an item that rhymes with it. So 1 is bun, 2 shoe, 3 tree, 4 door, 5 hive, 6 sticks, 7 heaven, 8 gate, 9 line, 10 hen. And if you practice it enough, you'll eventually get to the point where you can count just by the items: bun, shoe, tree, door, hive, sticks, heaven, gate, line, hen. And what happens is that so then you replace those words with the numbers, and then the way the PEG system is supposed to work, you're supposed to then go and, let's say, for example, your mom gives you a grocery list, right? And she says she wants you to go and buy these 5 items at the grocery store. Rather than having to write them down, if you know the PEG system, you can go, and the idea of the PEG is that you're pegging a particular grocery item to the item, the numbered item. So like, for example, maybe you need butter, so butter on the bun. Maybe you need carrots, so put the carrots in the shoe, okay? Maybe you need, I don't know, maybe you need milk and you're thinking of the milk hanging from the tree. So it will help you supposedly remember those things. Now, for me, I have a terrible memory, I'll be honest. It just sounds more work to me. But hey, whatever floats your boat, right? So that's the PEG system. Now, the other thing that can help you is chunking information, and hierarchies can also help you remember information. So chunking information, kind of putting together pieces that you kind of take pieces of information. So right now, for example, we're in a unit about memory, right? So we're chunking the information into smaller bits of information. So right now we're just talking about encoding. This video is just talking about encoding. The next video will talk about storage, okay? So we're chunking the information into smaller bits so it's easier to remember, okay? That also explains why, for example, have you memorized your Social Security number yet? Okay, Social Security number is always 3 numbers, dash, 2 numbers, dash, 4 numbers, okay? Chunking that into smaller bits rather than having to remember all 9 numbers totally is very difficult if it's just one string of 9 numbers. But if you take it chunks by chunk, you'll be more likely to remember it. Hierarchies also help. So if you remember that this is the big idea and these are the small subheadings ideas, that will also help. That also explains why I do my notes in an outline form. This is the big idea, is what to encode. These are the smaller ideas. All right, that's all I wanted to say about encoding. Hopefully it helped you encode the information into your long-term memory. If not, let me know if you have any questions.